Alan Mitchell. I'm curious what your personal opinion is regarding Scientology successes. Have any of these people actually achieved anything in the way of inner healing, maturity, and self-improvement through Scientology? Or is it possible they have simply slid deeper into hypnotic self-delusion? All right, thank you for this question, Alan. And the truth is that it's both. It's not an either or. There are people who have had material substantial gains with Scientology auditing or training. And there are maybe those same people or other people who have sunk deeper into delusion and pretty skewed, bizarre worldviews. And both can happen even in the same auditing session. So it's a real mix of things here. But what I will say about this is that what you do not get in Scientology are the promises fulfilled. You don't get the abilities gained that Scientology promises. And let me give you an example. At grade 0 is the ability to communicate with anyone about anything. That's the ability gained from grade 0, from communication auditing, is you should be able to tell anybody anything you want anytime. You should also, now that's not just you telling other people. This actually extends out to you being able to admit or tell anything to yourself, you being able to tell other people anything, them being able to tell you anything, other people being able to tell other people anything, and you're okay with it. You don't have to stop them, halt them, censor them, get all in a tizzy about it because of some subconscious impulses or ideas. And and then self to self. So those are your 4 flows on which communication is supposed to now be totally freed up, and you are supposed to be a communication release. Okay, well, you can clearly see every single Scientologist fails that test miserably because they are not willing to hear a word I say. They are not willing to experience that communication. So if they have the ability to hear or experience any communication, yet there are communications they must censor because, and this is important, because they believe, that Hubbard told them, they believe that hearing my words, actually hearing anything I have to say, Leah, Mike, Tony, all of us critics, not just me, any anti-Scientology, critical of Scientology material is going to hurt them spiritually. It's actually going to stop their forward progress to hear words. I mean, the contradictoriness is built into the DNA of Scientology. You can't escape it, right? You can't say you can have the ability to communicate with anyone on any subject freely and comfortably, and then have a church policy that forbids open communication on topic A, B, C, D, and E. These two things are it's just so hypocritical, right? It doesn't work. So how do these two, so I will easily show how Scientology, that just as that, and that's just one level. I could do the same with, grade 1 problems, right? The ability to spot any source of problem and thereby make the problem vanish. That's the ability gained for grade 1, is you're supposed to be able to spot the sources of problems that are in your life and thereby make them vanish by spotting that. It's magic. It's magical thinking. It's completely whack. But this is what Scientologists think. And that thinking, by the way, has plagued me for far too long. I mean, even up to this day, that stuff still interferes with my thinking. Because it's magical thinking. It's like, oh, well, I realized why the problem exists, so it should just go away now. Yeah, right. That's not how it works. But that's how Scientologists think it works. Okay, so in auditing sessions, right, returning this directly to your question, in auditing sessions, people have wins. They have these, oh, I can spot any problem and I can make it go away. Well, that's not a very permanent gain because they find out in a day or two that it's just not true. Some problem comes along and they can't make it go away, but they can't admit that to themselves. And so begins the motivated reasoning and the cognitive dissonance and all that. But the wins and gains they're having in auditing having to do with communication or problems or, litany of other things that they tackle right? Those aren't really very substantive gains. They're not really very substantial. They don't hold a lot of weight. So I can judge that. I can look at that objectively and go, yeah, that's kind of nonsense. Now, that all being said, does that, can you go into an auditing session and talk about your mom or talk about communication problems you're having with your coworkers and maybe go to work the next day and maybe, act a little different and maybe communicate a little different and sort of change things? If maybe talk a little less, if you thought you were talking too much, maybe talk a little more, if you thought you were being a little too bit introverted. Like maybe you could adjust things in your world based on some epiphany or realization that you had in an auditing session. Perfectly legit, totally valid. And as a result, you're improving conditions in your life, right? Great. So that's the kind of thing I think you're going to see in terms of positive. I mean, really, when you get down to the brass tacks of it, it's little things like that. But Scientologists exaggerate it and make it out to be this great, big, huge thing. And every win has to be like the most fantastic thing ever. And I can, see sounds and I can taste the saline content in my cells and, all this crazy nonsense that they get up to with perception and ability that are that stuff is just delusion. There's just no other word for it. Nobody is sensing the saline content of their cells. Sometimes I really am just shocked that I used to think that way.